You're listening to the Life with Old Dogs podcast, and I'm your host, Dawn Mimnaugh, primary caretaker of all of our wonderful senior German Shepherds right here at Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary. Hey there, folks. Welcome to the very first episode of Life with Old Dogs podcast. I am so excited about this day. A podcast for Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary is something I have ruminated over for some time now. And, I just couldn't find the time to do this. My schedule is so full already with working, with being the primary caretaker for Woody's Place, with being the president of Woody's Place, with it us just coming off a pandemic year and volunteerism for Woody's Place being at an all-time low. I've had to wear so many hats this year. It's been insane. And I've wanted to do a podcast for Woody's Place. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to throw another hat on my head. There's no time like the present. You know what they say. If you want something done, give it to someone busy. And that is me. And here we are. Okay. Excuse me, folks. So, Life with Old Dogs podcast. Okay. The way I'd like to break this down is I want to have seasons for the podcast or chapters, meaning I am going to be posting a podcast once a week, and then that'll go on for about 6 weeks, and then I'm going to take a little break while I regroup for the next season. Okay, so it's going to be like your favorite TV show. The only difference is each season is going to talk about one topic in particular. So the first season here is going to be based on origins. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I'm Dawn, by the way, and explain how it is I came to be involved with German Shepherds, particularly senior German Shepherds. Then I'm going to discuss Woody and why I decided to start a sanctuary for Woody, based on Woody's memory, I should say. And then, we'll get right into it. What it's like to start a sanctuary, how to start a sanctuary, what it's like to have a sanctuary right here on my own property. It's a full-time job. It's something I never get away from, but it is a labor of love. And as much as there are times when I just break down and cry, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. I never have any time for myself. I don't ever have any help. I just can't do this anymore. I get over that real quick when I look in the eyes of the senior German Shepherds I'm caring for, and I remember all of the senior German Shepherds before them that needed a place to call home, and I think of Woody, and I think, oh my God, just buck up. Just buck up. This too shall pass. You do it because you love it and because you know you can't walk away. And that's the God's honest truth, folks. I just couldn't imagine walking away. At some point, I'm going to be a senior myself, and maybe I won't be able to care for as many senior German Shepherds, but I will be still caring for senior German Shepherds. There's just no doubt about that. So that's how the podcast is going to work. I'm again super excited about this. Another reason I decided to start a podcast is because like myself, I notice more and more people getting away from social media, especially over this pandemic. Social media is great for some things. It's a great way to connect, but it's also got an ugly side. People fight, people bicker. It causes hard feelings, and I just find it to be depressing. Quite honestly, I just find it to be depressing. So I think other people are in the same boat at this point and are steering away from things like Facebook and possibly Instagram or Twitter or whatever. So a podcast is another great way to keep in touch with people without it being volatile, dramatic, depressing, all that stuff that can happen on, Twitter and Facebook. And also because you can be doing other things while you're listening to a podcast. You could be washing dishes. You could be walking your dog. You could be sitting at your desk working and still have an earbud in one ear listening to a podcast. You don't have to actually be on a page scrolling through. You could just be listening. It's like listening to an audiobook while you're doing other things. So that's why a podcast. All right. I believe I've gone on enough about starting a podcast and why a podcast and how the Woody's Place Life with Old Dogs podcast is going to be arranged. So things we're going to be talking about. Again, the first season is going to be origins, how the sanctuary came to be. And then we'll take it from there. If there is something you would love to hear us talk about, and when I say us, I'm going to plan this podcast so that, yes, I will be running the podcast. I will be discussing certain things about senior German Shepherds, such as degenerative myelopathy. That would be a season, the ins and outs and diving deep down into degenerative myelopathy and how we handle it here at the sanctuary. But I also plan on interviewing people, such as maybe a veterinarian who specializes in degenerative myelopathy, other rescues and sanctuaries who are dealing primarily with senior dogs. I'd like to interview them as well. Perhaps a nutritionist, a canine nutritionist, because we do a lot of home cooking. So, I'd like to interview a canine nutritionist about the ins and outs of how to home cook properly for your senior German Shepherd. And that is another thing. So this is going to be geared primarily toward senior German Shepherds, but some of the information we're going to be throwing out there, and myself, I'm going to be throwing out there, is certainly can be applied to any breed of senior dog. Okay, enough of that. So you have an idea of what's going to be happening here. I'm going to be signing off for now, and I will see you in a week with our very first topic. Thank you all for tuning in. Hey there, folks. Welcome to this week's episode of Life with Old Dogs podcast. We are in our Origins season. That is the how and why Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary came to be. And this week, I'm going to be talking about Woody. He gets a whole episode to himself because he was and is the inspiration behind Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary. In the last episode, I touched base on Woody somewhat, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to back up a little bit here and start from the beginning with Woody. You may have heard this part already from the last episode, but Woody was surrendered to the Burlington County SPCA in New Jersey in December 2007. He was 9 years old. And, he wasn't the most muscular German Shepherd, male German Shepherd I had ever seen. He was kind of petite. His chest wasn't huge. He had this little chicken butt back end. That was really because of degenerative myelopathy, which he had started displaying signs of right from the get-go, but I really didn't know what I was looking at that time. He had eyes that were scarred by pannus, which it's an autoimmune disease, and pannus is a brown cholesterol-like substance that builds up on the eye And if it's not treated, it could cause scarring, and it could certainly impede and even take away a dog's ability to see if it's not treated. So he really didn't have like any white to his eyes. It was just all dark. So that looked kind of odd. He had discoloration on the tip of his nose. I didn't know if that was because of he had, been scraping his nose repeatedly on something, or if that was autoimmune as well. So, yeah, he wasn't like, I'm going to say, the most attractive looking German Shepherd in the whole wide world, but he was absolutely beautiful to me. So anyway, he came into the Burlington County SPCA in New Jersey in December 2007, and one of the volunteers with the German Shepherd rescue I had been with at that time had been evaluating another German Shepherd there when Woody came in. She had put out several pleas for someone to help Woody, and I decided I was going to help him. So we ended up bringing him home. It was the end of December, and we ended up bringing him home and started to get him acclimated into our family unit and our lifestyle. And he took to it right away. I mean, I don't think I had ever met a more grateful dog than Woody. That is something that struck me again right off the bat with him. He was just so compliant. It was like he knew he had been given, a saving grace, and he was going to be forever grateful to that person or family who saved his life. And there was not one issue with Woody. Now, he was with us again from December 7th until February 2011. And I'll tell you what, I mean, there was just not one blip in the map in terms of behavior, poor behavior from Woody. And that was fantastic because, I did kind of have a knee-jerk reaction to agreeing to foster him, which is what I did in the beginning. I agreed to foster him because nobody else was willing to step up. But my life was very, very busy at that time with a business and still having kids at home and other dogs in the house. And my husband worked long hours, and, whatever dog we brought in was going to have to go with the flow. So I really wasn't sure if that was going to be the case with Woody. And, he was an older dog, so I knew his needs were going to be different than, a puppy or a middle-aged dog. I knew that there were probably going to be, we were probably going to have to make adjustments to our daily routine. Like, I figured he probably wouldn't be able to hold it as long, in terms of going to the bathroom while we were out at work. I figured I'd have to be making more stops home, and being the owner of my own business, I could do that, but that didn't necessarily mean it was going to be convenient either. I also figured we were going to be making more trips to the vet, and that could be any hours of the day with an older dog. So, I was trying to make sure I was ready for that. And at the end of the day, my mindset was, yeah, I'm going to get this dog, and I don't care what it takes. I'm just going to do it, because it was very, very important to me to save his life. And honest to God, I don't even know why, because like I said, I had seen many other German Shepherds in need through that German Shepherd rescue group that I had been with, and I never stepped up to foster, not once in the whole 2 years that I had been volunteering for them prior to Woody's arrival. I did everything else but foster. So I don't know what it was about Woody that made me say, yes, I'm going to do this. And furthermore, I agreed to foster him. But once he came into our home and I saw how he just melted into the bed, it was actually Levi, my personal German Shepherd's bed. he took over. He basically commandeered her bed, said, "This is mine now. I really need this. You can lay on the sofa or something like that, but I'm an old boy. I can't get up on the sofa and I really need this bed. So I'm going to take it. Really hope you don't mind." And she didn't. She actually let him have that bed, which was totally uncharacteristic of her. So she let him have the bed. He took it over, and the bed was right next to my desk. And I had a lot of time to look at him, as I was doing invoicing and stuff like that, just laying on this bed, realizing this dog is just, first of all, he's a gem. He's an absolute keeper. And second of all, I can't even imagine putting this dog through. Well, we're going to, someone dumps him off in the shelter, scared to death. And now somebody else picked him up and took them to their house. That was another volunteer who helped me out and kept him overnight for me till I could get Woody the next day. And then these people come and scoop me up, and then they take me to this other house, and it's a kind of a noisy house and a lot of activity and other dogs. And I really don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to be a real good boy because I want to make sure I just have a place to call my own. And I just thought I can't see him going anywhere else. I just couldn't, I didn't have whatever it took to say, yeah, I'll keep him for a little while. I'll get to learn his personality and his temperament and, his behavior and see where he stands health-wise. And then we'll adopt him out. And that rescue that I was with had a policy that the dog had to be with a foster for at least 30 days before the dog could be adopted out. And the more I thought about that, the more it bothered me. I was thinking to myself, well, he would at that point be feeling like, yep, this is my home. I'm good to go. And then what? Somebody else would come along and possibly, probably not, but possibly want to adopt him. And I thought, nope, I can't do that. It's not happening. Woody is home. This is his home. And we're going to be whatever he needs until he leaves this earth. So I was a foster failure. And I got teased about being a foster failure. And that was okay. But something else kept resonating with me in regard to Woody. And it was not about him possibly being adopted out to someone else, because honestly, the chances of him being adopted out with health issues it was possible, but not probable. But something kept resonating me that really bothered me. And I didn't share it with the rest of the rescue group. When I had been in the presence of other volunteers and we were talking about Woody, one of the volunteers said, I didn't take him because he was old. And this particular volunteer said, I never take old dogs because I don't want to get stuck with them. And to me, it was like a punch to the gut. Again, I react to things differently than other people. And when it comes to dogs and injustice or anything like that, I typically feel anger first before I feel anything else. And the reason I feel that is because, we are their voice. They're supposed to protect us. They're supposed to protect the home, but we're supposed to protect them too. And I just felt that the remark that this particular volunteer made was a direct insult to Woody and older dogs in general, like they were just trash. She was going to be stuck with them. Like that was such a horrible thing. And I had already had, I let me just back up a second here. I do not subscribe to the throwaway society, and I'm making air quotes here. I don't subscribe to, I have to have the best of the best. I have to have the brand new all the time. I have to have the biggest. I have to outdo everybody. And when I'm done with it, I'm just done with it. I'm just throwing it away or doing whatever. It's not my problem anymore. I've never been that way. I grew up in a household where we didn't have a whole lot. And what we had, we took care of. And even when we were done with it, if, it was still in good shape, we gave it to somebody else who needed it. We didn't really throw away a whole lot. And I still have that mindset in my early 50s. I still have that mindset. Here's a big example. The truck that I brought Woody home in, is a Dodge Ram. It's a Dodge Ram 1500. It's a 2004. I bought it brand new in 2004 after I never had a new vehicle ever once. So that was my first new vehicle was in 2004. I bought it with my own money from the business that I had. And I still have that truck. It is still sitting out in my driveway. It needs some work, and I bought a new vehicle because that truck isn't really necessarily reliable at this point, and I need it to get around, obviously. But I know some other people who have had, I don't know how many vehicles in the time that I had bought that truck in 2004 until I stopped using it in December 2020. And like I said, I still have it. So, I cherish my possessions. I don't go over the top. I don't go overboard. I really don't care what's in style or what everybody has or the latest phone or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. As long as what I have is what I bought and paid for and it works, I'm going to keep using it whether I get made fun of or not. And I felt like in my mind, when that volunteer said what she said, I felt, yep, she's one of these people that subscribes to the throwaway society. Oh, yeah, it's not flashy anymore. Yeah, it really doesn't serve any purpose anymore. Who cares? Just get rid of it. It's not my problem, So I took it really personally. It was equivalent to someone telling me, if I just had a baby, someone walking up to me and telling me my baby was ugly. I was really, really unhappy about her, and now I'm saying her. Yeah, I was really unhappy about what she had said because to me, it just made it sound like Woody was junk and she wasn't going to be bothered with someone else's problem. That's really what it sounded like. So as time went on, I had actually come across that sentiment, her sentiment, several times over. And here's another, for instance. One of the accounts that I had as a cleaning service was the hockey rink, the ice hockey rink, where our boys played ice hockey. And I had become friendly with the people who had owned the rink. I mean, obviously, they were one of my accounts, and my boys played hockey there. So we were there a lot, a whole lot. And when we would go in to clean, it was very early in the morning, and several times during the summer, I would take the dogs with me. I would take Levi, and I wouldn't take Kinchi with me because she always ran away, so she had to stay home. But I would take Levi and Woody with me to the ice hockey rink. Again, nobody was there. The owners were fine with it, and the dogs could lay wherever I was working, they could just lay there or walk around or whatever. But, in the summer, again, suburbs of Philadelphia, it gets hot and it was nice and cool in there and the dogs loved it. They loved being in that ice hockey rink. Well, one day, the owner's son came in and he was a young adult. I don't know. He's probably like maybe 8 or 9 years younger than me. And he came in and he saw Woody. It was the first time he saw Woody. Now, he had seen Levi before. And again, I've touched base on Levi. She was just the quintessential German Shepherd. She was a female and huge, 110 pounds, 27 inches at the shoulders, just sleek, black, and muscular. And everyone was taken by Levi. I mean, she was like Miss America. Everyone knew Levi. Everybody wanted to pet Levi. Everybody wanted to be around Levi, oohed and awed over her, or they were terrified of her because she was, this big black German Shepherd. But hardly anyone ever paid attention to Woody. And that bothered me. Again, it's like telling me my baby was ugly. It's like, what's wrong with Woody? There's nothing wrong with Woody. Here's this good boy, great personality, absolutely sweet old boy. And all he wants is a little acknowledgement, just a little pat on the head, scratch under the chin, anything like that, something along those lines. And he rarely ever got it when we were out in public. So this one day I was in there cleaning, and the owner's son had come in, and of course he was oohing and awing all over Levi. And then when it came to Woody, he actually shunned Woody. Like, he didn't want to touch Woody at all. And he looked right at me and he said, "Why did you adopt an old dog?" Well, I had a big old wet industrial mop in my hand, and when I tell you I had to contain myself because I wanted to slap him upside the head with some dirty water from the bucket on that mop, that's what I had to do, because I just saw red. And I thought, it's one thing to think things, it's another just to come right out and say it. But instead of having, a negative reaction and kind of stooping to his level, I thought to myself, I didn't really think too much of him to begin with. He was a very spoiled young man who, was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and was handed everything and didn't appreciate anything. So I thought, I could have this negative reaction, or I could use this moment to try to educate this rather ignorant young man. But really, no matter what I say, it's probably going to fall on deaf ears because he already has his mind made up. So my response to him was, because he needs a home, he has quality of life, he's a delightful dog. And I said, and someday we're all going to be old and we are all going to need assistance. And I said, and I hope when you get to that point, if you have children or whoever your family is, doesn't feel the same way about you that you do about this dog. And of course, he had some other things to say. So the message I was trying to get across is, hey, someday we're all going to be old and we're all going to need some assistance. He didn't get it. He didn't care. And I knew that's the way it was going to go. But he was not the only one who thought that way. The volunteer from the old rescue that I was with didn't feel that way. And I've heard it time and time again. Not just from, people that I meet on the street, but also in the rescue world. I also had, after I created Woody's Place, I also had a vice president from another German Shepherd rescue chastise me for making it a senior German Shepherd sanctuary. And she told me, these dogs have lived their lives. If you're going to do something like this, you should make it for younger dogs who have their whole lives ahead of them. Oh boy. Okay. Well, that's fine. Again, there's lots of rescues out there for German Shepherds of all ages, and that's, good on them. Good on them. I support them. I always support them. I even support this individual's rescue still till this day. But what I don't like is being, punched in the gut because Woody's Place is for senior German Shepherd sanctuary. Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary is for senior German Shepherds, 8 years and older. So backing up to Woody, we walked Woody all over the place with Levi. And again, hardly ever did he get any recognition. So the more that went on, of course I loved Levi. Of course I loved her. And Levi wasn't slighted in any way, shape, or form. But I did show partiality to Woody because it was so important to me for him to know that he was very loved and that he was just important as any younger German Shepherd to me. So I didn't want him to feel badly about that. It was almost like I was projecting my feelings onto him, because he probably didn't know any different, really, but I did, and that mattered to me. So Woody got everything Levi got, and believe me, she lived a very lavish life, even more, because I did tend to spend a little more time with him, getting down on his bed and petting him and brushing to him and talking with him and stuff like that. So he actually did end up getting a little more attention from me than Levi. Levi also had the rest of the family that, fell all over her. And, they liked Woody too. And nobody slighted Woody. Even when my husband walked the dogs, he always took Woody. He always made sure Woody was okay. If I wasn't there to feed any of the dogs, everybody made sure Woody was okay. So it's not that he got ripped off in any way, shape, or form, but I did go out of my way to make sure that he knew he was special. So over the years with Woody, he had really opened my eyes to the plight of older German Shepherds, and that they absolutely still have quality of life. And yeah, okay, so, their younger counterparts find themselves homeless too, and they absolutely deserve to have a loving family as well. But these older German Shepherds, this was my mindset. These older German Shepherds shouldn't be discriminated against because of their age. And yeah, the other thing I heard was, well, they're going to cost more because their medical needs are greater than a younger German Shepherd. Yeah, tell that to someone who has a younger German Shepherd with mega esophagus, okay? Or allergies. Or diabetes. I mean, come on. A German Shepherd, they're prone to so many different health conditions, and they can have them at any age. But yes, it is true that as they get older, they have a greater chance of having medical issues, which, you need to be prepared for. There's no doubt about it. But I've often thought if we take care of these dogs, like my Levi, for instance, when I first brought her in, I really didn't know anything great about nutrition and supplements and all that stuff. We knew to exercise her and socialize her, but I mean, we didn't feed her very good food when she first came into our lives because I didn't know any better. I thought pedigree was the way to go. Pedigree of all foods. Oh, God, that's like right up there with Old Roy or Beneful. It's awful. But I didn't know. I didn't know anything. And it wasn't until Woody came along and then he was diagnosed with degenerative myelopathy. I thought to myself, okay, well, I know as a human that if I want to stay well, I have to eat well. I have to eat whole foods. I have to eat, have proper nutrition. Can't have too many nasty fats and sugars and stuff like that. And just in my mind, I was thinking, well, it's got to be the same for these dogs. And what is this crap in the bag anyway? What are they eating? I don't even know. And then, of course, I started looking into it. And then if you look into dog food, I mean, you can get lost down this deep, dark rabbit hole in terms of what it is, where it comes from, how nasty it is. I mean, even the temperature that they cook it at, it's at a very high temperature, and that in and of itself is a carcinogen. And maybe this is part of the reason why canine cancer rates have skyrocketed. Over vaccinating might be another. So I just found myself glued to my computer, reading all about canine nutrition, vaccinations, these topical solutions that we, pesticides that we put on top of our dogs monthly for flea and tick treatment, and how it affects our dogs. How it affects them, whether they're healthy, and especially when they have an autoimmune disease like degenerative myelopathy. So Woody changed the way that I looked at what the dogs were eating. So my main goal for Woody, and then of course Levi, was to make sure that they had the best shot at living the longest life they possibly could. And I had a better chance at it with Levi, of course, than I did with Woody because Levi was still young. So I changed the way I fed them and I started to home cook for them. And I really, really did my best to make sure that I home cook for them all the time. But I mean, it just wasn't realistic, not with a busy life. So I kind of did like this 80-20 split where, 80% of the time I was home cooking for them and 20% of the time they were getting high quality dog food. And that's still what I do for the Woody's Place dog. We still have kibble in the house. It is high quality. It's not something you're going to the grocery store and buying, that's for sure. And I also will do canned dog food for the Woody's Place dogs of the same brand as the kibble, but most of the time I'm home cooking for the dogs. Even treats. We have Zook's treats in the house. Sometimes we will have other high quality treats in the house, but most of the time I'm making treats. I just made treats for the dogs a little while ago with coconut water. It's our blog post recipe this week. It's coconut water, banana, baby food, and yogurt. And the dogs love it. So to me, it was very important that Woody had whole foods that were properly balanced, high quality supplements to give him a great shot at, I knew he wasn't going to beat degenerative myelopathy, but building him up inside to give him the best shot at living a long life with quality. And again, with DM, I knew it was going to be an uphill battle, and I knew eventually we were going to lose that battle, but I just wanted to make sure he had the best quality of life while we could. So yeah, home cooking was the way to go for me, for Woody. The other thing that I stopped doing was I stopped putting flea and tick treatment on my dogs. And I went with an all natural recipe. And again, I hear people still scoff at this. It just happened not too long ago, actually, right here on Facebook, and it's okay. I get it. There are some people who swear by it, and it won't hurt your dog, and it's totally researched. It's totally fine. I beg to differ, because it does affect dogs, particularly with autoimmune diseases. I've also seen it cause seizures in dogs. So I beg to differ, and I will never use that stuff again. So what I do is I make my own homemade flea and tick repellent. Now, again, it's not going to eliminate fleas and ticks completely, but I can count on my one hand since the inception of Woody's Place how many times we've ever had an issue with fleas and ticks. So in my mind, this homemade flea and tick repellent that I make that's all natural works. And I feel like I should add, we also have chickens here at the sanctuary, and the chickens, they have to stay in a certain area when it's day, pretty much during the regular parts of the day when the dogs are out walking around the sanctuary. But the chickens do free range after that. So they probably cut down on a lot of the fleas and ticks here on the property. But this was about Woody. So I stopped using flea and tick treatment on him. I stopped getting his vaccines except for what was required by our state. And I think at that time it was rabies and distemper. Now I believe it's just rabies. And also I didn't even get him a rabies shot regularly, I would get a titer test done to see if he still had the antibodies in his body. And if he didn't, then he didn't need another rabies shot. So I stopped what I consider over vaccinating. And I do the exact same thing for the Woody's Place senior German Shepherds that are in my care now and have been. Okay, it's very, very minimal. And fortunately, I found a vet that I absolutely love. It's Carbondale Veterinary Hospital, and they never push. They know me, and they never, ever push to say, well, let's get Lyme disease, let's get Bordetella, shots and all that stuff. They don't do that because they know I'm not going to. We used to do that in the beginning of Woody's Place, Bordetella, Lyme disease, and guess what? We ended up with dogs that always got Lyme disease and Bordetella, whether they had the shots or not. So no, we don't do that anymore. So as time progressed, Woody couldn't make the walks that we used to make. It was hard for him, and he started to knuckle under with his back feet. And at the time, we living in the suburbs of Philadelphia, we were in a concrete jungle, so it really wasn't a good idea to walk him. He refused anything like booties or any sort of assistance. He just, with any sort of apparatus, he was just a stubborn old man, but still very, very sweet and very, very appreciative. So eventually in 2009, August 2009, we moved to the very northern part of the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And I know the Poconos is, pretty much everyone knows the Poconos in Pennsylvania, but we didn't live in a touristy part of the Poconos. In fact, a lot of locals there said it wasn't even the Poconos, but it is. It is. It's just not the flashy part. And I loved it. I thought it was great. It was very, very rural. It was right up my alley. And I would take Woody out. He never saw blacktop after that. Never saw blacktop after that. So it took a little while for him to decompress. In fact, our first night there, he ended up bloating. I guess the stress from moving and having degenerative myelopathy was too much. At this point, he was still mobile. He did have DM, but he was still mobile. And I had to rush him to this ER vet that was like down by Wilkes-Barre. So it was like 45 minutes away, and it was at night, and there's no street lights whatsoever. I had no idea where I was going. And to boot, it was a torrential downpour. So I was white knuckling the steering wheel the whole way. It was myself, my daughter, and my youngest son, Tristan. And here we go to the vet. And my youngest son, Tristan, was very, very upset because he had grown very fond of Woody. And I'm thinking, here we go. He's 2 years older now, and he's not going to make it. This is bad. This is really bad. And I was bracing myself for the worst. So we get to the vet, and I had given him Gas-X. I told them before I was coming that before I arrived, I called them. I said I was bringing him in and that he was bloating. So when I get there, they were waiting for him with a gurney, and the vet on call, he said Woody wasn't bloating. He didn't look like he was bloating, and I was adamant. I said, he is absolutely 100% bloating, and you need to do something about it. So they took him back, and he comes out maybe like, I don't even know if it was 15 minutes later, and he said, you're right, he is bloating. And he said, I have to tell you now, his survival rate's not so great because he's older. And I said, I know that. And without even thinking, now I just bought a house. Okay. So funds were kind of tight. And I just, without even thinking, I said, I don't care what it takes. You save his life. And I think this doctor probably thought I was nuts. And honestly, when I look back, I think I was nuts too, but they did. He did. He was able to save Woody's life. He had to remove his spleen, and Woody was pretty beat up after that. I don't do that now. I realize I put Woody through entirely too much, but I saved his life. The guy saved his life, so that was awesome. He had to stay at the vet's for 3 days, because he was in rough shape, and then he was able to come home, and he was in rough shape for a while. I mean, it really beat him up, and it really took a lot out of him. And then I was feeling guilty because I felt like I put my needs before Woody's. But that was in August 2009. And Woody, like I said, didn't pass away until February 2011. So he still went on for a little while longer, and he still had quality of life. He was still up, he was still mobile, he was still walking around, he was still eating. We wouldn't take walks anymore on blacktop roads. Instead, we had fields all around our house that were ours. We had woods, and through the woods, somebody had made logging roads. I don't know who. And, they were ours. So we would walk on the logging roads, which led us to a lake, that really no one used. And Woody would get in and he would splash around in the lake, and then we would just hang out down there for a little while, and eventually we would get bored and we would meander back on up to the house. And so he still had quality of life. It was just he was a lot slower, and it took him a lot more time to walk and eat and stuff like that. And I was completely fine with that. I mean, whatever he needed, we were going to do. So he was very, very happy. He was very happy where we were living in that part of the Poconos. We rarely ever had a door shut. He could walk out. We had a wraparound porch, and he could just walk out there and lay out there in the sun if he wanted to. We didn't have any neighbors, so there was no one around us really to, for him to hear noises or other dogs barking or anything like that. I mean, he was living the ultimate stress-free life and loving every minute of it. But eventually, with degenerative myelopathy, he took a turn, and when he took a turn, that was it. He really declined quickly. So he couldn't walk at that point, and I didn't even know anything about help him up harnesses. And I was using like a towel. I was putting a towel under his belly. I saw it on YouTube or something. And that's how I would get him up. But I would squeeze his belly, and he would end up peeing himself and defecating. And that was no fun. So eventually, I found Jim Descoli. He is the president of Sedona Shepherd Sanctuary, and in Millburn, New Jersey. And somehow I found him online. I don't even know how. And I just happened to be telling him about Woody, and his German Shepherd had degenerative myelopathy and had passed away, and he had the wheel cart, and he wanted to know if I wanted to borrow it for Woody. And I didn't even know him. And I thought, wow, this is really nice. So on a Friday evening, my husband and I made a very long trip from northern Pennsylvania down to Millburn, New Jersey, in rush hour traffic to get this wheel cart. And Jim was just a lovely, lovely man. He still is till this day. And I brought the wheel cart back, and we put Woody in the wheel cart, and we took him outside. We put Woody in the wheel cart. We had such high hopes that this is going to be great. This is going to extend his life even longer. And Woody was like, what is this? What do you have me in here for? I'm not walking around in this thing. I don't even know what this is, and it scares me. So we tried desperately to get Woody to take to that wheel cart. And two things: he was very stubborn, and he wasn't going to have it. And quite honestly, he was too far gone, and I just couldn't see it. And I still live with that regret till this day, that I let him go too long before I was able to say, okay, he's had enough. He can't do this anymore. So right after Christmas of 2010, I started sleeping out in the dining room on the floor with Woody, because he really couldn't go anywhere. He really was just bedridden at that point. And my husband started to make comments about, you really need to say goodbye. This isn't fair to him. This is really hard. And again, I was just like, no, not happening. He's not finished yet. He still has quality of, I mean, look at him. He's he's still smiling. That's what I would say. When, really he wasn't. But the hard thing about degenerative myelopathy is, your dog is completely cognitive and they're not in any pain from degenerative myelopathy, but that's physical pain. I mean, there is mental anguish because they certainly know that they can't get up and move around. They don't know they're defecating, and that's another subject in and of itself. But his quality of life was really gone, and I just could not bring myself to say goodbye. So it was finally February. I took him to our vet that we had been seeing at the time. It's not the vet that we go to now, but a vet that I had been seeing at the time. And we were there a lot. I mean, they had gotten a lot of money from me. There's no doubt about it. And I just kept thinking there had to be something else they could do. But, really in my heart, I knew there wasn't. I was just pig-headed. So on February 11th, it was early in the morning, and Woody was really in bad shape. And I knew at that point, I can't let him go on any longer like this. I have to put on my big girl pants, and I have to let him go, because this is not good for him at all. So I called my vet, and there happened to be someone new working there that day. It was a receptionist. And I said who I was, and I said, I have to bring him in. I said, he's got to be euthanized. And this was really hard for me. Like, if I didn't get him in to get him euthanized, I didn't know if I was going to change my mind or what, So I knew if I was going to do this, it had to be then. And she said, well, we can't see you right now. And I said, what do you mean you can't see me right now? I mean, I have to bring him in to be euthanized. He was in respiratory failure. That's what was happening. And I said, he's not doing well. And she said, this was a Friday, I think. And she said, well, we'll make an appointment for you on Monday. I said, no, we can't wait till Monday. So I had then gone from, I can't do this to, I have to get this done. This is really horrible for him, and I have to get this done. So I thought, okay, this isn't going to work out. And I had gone to Carbondale Veterinary Hospital one other time with Woody to get a second opinion. And I had met Dr. Hank. He is, or was, the owner of Carbondale. And I know, like, a lot of people weren't thrilled with his bedside manner. He was pretty rough. He was an old farm vet, and he didn't have great bedside manner. So people weren't thrilled with him. But I had gone to him, and he had lifted Woody up on the examining table like he was cattle. And I was thinking to myself, like, what? Why are you lifting my dog like that? That's horrible. But Woody didn't flinch. It was almost like it was natural to him. And he looked Woody over, didn't even take 5 minutes to look Woody over. And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, this is an old dog and he's going to die soon. What do you want me to do? And I thought, oh my gosh. Again, it was like another punch to the gut. I'm thinking, like, what? Everybody was right. What horrible bedside manner. I think I called him an ass. I'm not sure. And I collected Woody and I left, and I drove home crying. So they were on one side of the mountain and I was on the other side of the mountain, and I drove up and over this mountain crying, thinking to myself, I knew the truth. The truth was he was an old boy and he was going to die, but I didn't need to hear it, and he could have, like, said something nicer than that, but he didn't. He was a jerk. So here it is, February 11th. Woody is really in bad shape. And who do I call? It's noon now, and I call Dr. Henry, who happened to be on his lunch break, and I said who I was, and I was not even embarrassed at our last, because of what I called him an ass or something like that. But the last time we met, all I was thinking of was I have to let Woody go. I have to let him be free. And so I called Dr. Henry, and he answered, and I told him who I was and what was happening, and he remembered Woody, and to my surprise, he said, bring him right over. So I loaded Woody up in my truck, and I went over, And I started to get him out of the truck, and Dr. Hank met me outside and said, "Don't." He said, "Just leave him in the back seat of your truck." And I said, "Okay." And he said to me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I have to." And he said, "I think you're making the right decision." So he went through the process of euthanizing Woody right there in the back seat of my truck. And I was sitting in the back seat with his head on my lap, just bawling like a baby. I was hysterical, just totally inconsolable. In fact, it still gets me very upset to think about. And so Dr. Hank was he was at the other door toward Woody's, he was actually leaning over me. He was actually leaning over me, euthanizing Woody, because he had his front leg. That's how he was euthanizing him, and Woody's head was on my lap. So he passed away almost immediately. In fact, the first shot that Dr. Henry had given him to sedate him really pretty much did him in. So when when the second shot to euthanize him was administered, he was really pretty much gone. Before Dr. Henry had given him the shot to euthanize him, he actually checked his heart rate because he had thought he had passed too from the first shot to euthanize him. So that's how tired he was. Anyway, he had passed very peacefully right there in the backseat of my truck with his head on my lap. And I just I could not pull myself together. I could not collect myself. So to my surprise, Dr. Hank, again, this older farm vet, he had to have been in his 70s, and he's like this huge burly guy, slides into the back seat next to me and put his arm around my shoulders and just sat there with me, not saying a single word, not one word. He just sat there with me, and I probably took up his whole lunch break. And then finally he said to me, "Do you think you're okay to drive home?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, I think I'm okay to drive home. And I just told him, "Thank you so much for all you've done for me." And I drove back up and over the mountain. And, when my husband came home, we buried Woody. So I had got to see a whole different side of Dr. Hank than most other people. A human side to Dr. Hank. And I realized, he's a big burly man, and he might not have great bedside manner, but this man's got a huge heart. He just doesn't show it to people. So it took me a few days, more than a few days. It took me a few weeks actually to get over Woody not being right there with me and having to care for him. He required a lot of care. So that was really strange. And at that time, we had another senior German Shepherd who had come in. Her name was Roxy. She had come up from the South, and she was 14 years old. And she was actually in the home before Woody had passed away. And I was looking at her, and I was thinking, like, I wonder how many other dogs there, senior German Shepherds there are, like Woody and Roxy, who need a home. So I just started thinking about this, and I had a falling out also with the German Shepherd rescue that I was with at the time, and I thought, their path wasn't my path. And I really just wanted to focus on senior German Shepherds. And I did want to be a rescue, but I didn't want to adopt out. I wanted to be like a nursing home, so to speak, like a forever home for these senior German Shepherds who came to me. But there was no organization like that out there at that time. And I thought, well, I guess I should create something. And then what's it going to be? How am I going to frame this, and what am I going to call it? And I just thought, well, this was Woody's place. This is where Woody lived, and this is Woody's place. So how about Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary? We will have it in honor of Woody, and we will help other senior German Shepherds just like Woody, regardless of whether they have degenerative myelopathy or not. So as some of you know, we don't stray away from a dog who comes in who has degenerative myelopathy. I mean, most of the time it appears when they're here in our care. But we just took Prince in Easter Day of this year, 2021. He came in from the PSPCA in Philly, and they made it quite clear that he had degenerative myelopathy. He's in the beginning stages of it, but it's fine. I know how to deal with it. So it's totally fine. And here he is, and he still has quality of life just like Woody. So we formed Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary, my husband and I, and we've been at it since Woody's passing. In fact, I think the first official dog came in just a couple of weeks after he had passed, and we've been at it ever since. So that is Woody's story. I went on again a little long this time, but I feel it's important to get his story out there and to have you all understand why we only work with senior German Shepherds and why we are a sanctuary and not a rescue, so to speak, where we adopt them out. And again, it is because once these dogs get here, just like Woody, they need a place to land. They need a place to call home. They don't need to be shuttled around from foster to foster, or let's go to this rescue, adopter, and it doesn't work out, and then I come back again. They just need somewhere to call home. That is our philosophy. Again, might not be other organizations' philosophies, and that is totally fine, but that is our philosophy. And while they're here in our care, just like Woody, they're going to get the best of the best, whether it's for 2 years, 4 years, 18 months, or 3 days. It doesn't matter. However long they're here, they're going to get the best of the best, just like Woody. So, all right, folks, that's it. That is the story of Woody. Next week, we're going to be moving on to how we formed Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary. I had no idea there was so much involved in starting a nonprofit organization, really. But we'll touch base on that, and then we'll go from there. All right, folks, until next time, be well.